are listening to Pause. We pause for a second or two. This is episode 46. How to pause. Pausing is the central concept in our framework. Anything constructive on an emotional level begins with someone pausing. When someone chooses to pause, the trajectory, the momentum of the given situation is given an alternative. The person who is pausing can offer the situation and the people within the situation an alternative. Sometimes, when we pause, we realize that nothing needs to be done. That the situation can just play out the way it is. At other times, we come to the conclusion that it could be good to perform some kind of emotional skill in the situation. So we pause and we make some kind of judgment about if anything needs to be done emotionally, or if we can just let the situation unfold on its own. And then we put into practice one of the emotional skills from our framework. Today's episode is called How to Pause. Pausing is an activity that can seem deceptively simple. It's kind of like riding a bike. It can look very simple, but as we remember, when we learned to ride a bike as kids, it took some practice. It took some time before we sort of got the hang of it. And pausing is the same. However, I think I can say a few things to help point to making the learning of pausing a bit easier. So, how to pause has to do with how we feel in a given situation. And most often, pausing is needed when we feel that something is lacking or when we feel that there is too much of something. So basically, every time we feel that there is something off balance about the situation. So, to answer the question how to pause, it has to do with those moments when you are in a situation and you feel that something is off. Pausing is for those times when you feel that you're not really happy with the situation. There is something shaving. There is something gnawing. There is something bugging you. There is something or some things that you feel can be improved on. So how to pause? It begins with that you feel unsatisfied with something, or that you feel pained about something. And then it is almost in the exact same moment as you feel that something is amiss. There is too little of something or too much of something. In that moment when you sort of realize that there is something here that needs maybe some adjustment, then you pause. You sort of stop whatever you're doing, or slow down whatever you're doing. Maybe you are looking at something, and then you pause and look away and just, what is going on here? So you feel that something feels wrong, and as you notice that something feels wrong, you pause and you think for a moment. And then, if you have listened to this podcast, to pause, and if you have studied the pause framework of emotional skills, and if you have studied the universal skills, if you have studied the 5 situations, if you have studied the 5 goals, and if you have studied the 15 specific skills, then the degree to which you have studied these things, you will have like a skill set of ways to go in your given situation. So let me give you an example. You're sitting at your job. You're in a meeting with your work group. And you start feeling that something feels wrong. There is something just feeling not very constructive about this conversation. There's something feeling maybe destructive about this conversation. So you have a bad feeling, and that's where it starts. So you have this bad feeling, and you do this pause. So you pause, and you think for a moment. And then maybe you realize that, wow, everybody is speaking really on, like in a really high tone of voice. Like everybody's energy is very high up in their throats. That everybody is sort of like elevated and not really sitting very, they're not sitting very comfortably on their chairs. They're just very on edge, everybody. So you can, for example, notice that with your universal skill body, that, wow, people are really up in their throats and very edgy, on edge. You might also notice with your universal skill motion, for example, that the conversation is jumping very quickly from one subject to another in a very random and confusing kind of way. So the motion in this situation is very turbulent. There doesn't seem to be any clear direction of the conversation, and it's a very frustrating feeling for everyone. Okay, so you're feeling that, yeah, everybody here is very tense, they're very jumpy. No one is really sitting in a good way on their chair. The conversation is random and jumping from destructive subjects to other destructive subjects. It's a very toxic environment. So then you can go to the situations, the 5 situations. How does this situation feel? So maybe you come to the conclusion that this situation really feels like it's wearing everybody out. So it feels like the worn out situation. The situation with the 3 red dots. Okay. Everybody is wearing each other out with this destructive, high-paced, random energy. And then maybe you will come to the conclusion that, what if I just try one of the 3 specific skills for worn out situation? Since this work meeting I'm at now is a worn out situation emotionally. So you say to yourself, okay, inside yourself, I might as well try specific skill listening. And specific skill listening is about not trying so hard to find your own answer to a situation, but just giving up on yourself to find an answer in a situation when it's not really constructive. So you just take people in as they are. So by doing that, you are not really playing along with this destructive, high-paced conversation. You're doing something else than the others. So you pause, and then you think a little, and then you do something else. You try something else than the rest. And by doing that, you give all of you as a group the opportunity to change the trajectory of the situation. You sort of you open a door for everyone in this situation to take a different route. And sometimes just the sheer action of someone breaking the momentum, the destructive momentum of a situation, can change like dominoes, have a domino-like effect on the people in the situation. And sometimes it might result in people calming down or changing the mood at this meeting. I want to spend this last part of this episode how to pause. We're talking about the first part of the how. So the first part of our how to pause came down to that we felt that something felt unbalanced in the situation we are in. That we felt that something bothered us. There is too little of something or too much of something. The most important thing to keep in mind when thinking about how to pause is to take ourselves seriously on this matter. The point is that if we feel that something feels wrong, if we feel that something feels unbalanced, if we feel that there can be improvement being made, we must respect that. At some point, it will be you coming to the conclusion that something is off balance. At some other point, it's another person who will come to the same conclusion. So, whenever you are the person who feels that something is off, then you need to take that seriously. You need to respect yourself. You need to honor your sensibilities. And it's important to do these things because the next natural step when we do respect ourselves and our own sensibilities is that we start to become naturally curious. And that is very important. So it all starts with self-respect and honoring our own sensibilities. And then when we do that, we will start becoming more curious, both about ourselves and about others. So in the beginning, like when we learned how to ride the bike, in the beginning it will feel awkward, it will feel new. But then for every time we do it, for every time we have a bad feeling and choose to pause, every time we do it, it will become more natural to us. And for every time we do it and then take a step further and try some emotional skill on top of our pausing, the emotional aspect of life can start feeling like a craft. And that is why I call these emotional skills skills. They are skills. We can learn them and ever refine them. And when we start feeling that emotional skills is a craft, then it starts becoming fun. And then, after a while, we get this sort of energy that even in the midst of a really complicated and maybe painful situation, even in these kinds of situations, we can, as craftsmen, we can have this sort of curious and very constructive energy about us. Do you see what I'm getting at? So it starts with honoring your reactions, honoring your sensibilities. And then you try some things, you pause again, you pause and you try an emotional skill. You pause and you think about what kind of situation is this. You pause and you recognize some universal skill. And for every time you do this, it starts becoming more and more of a craft. And your sheer presence will start becoming quite profound. And my experience is that when there are people present who are sort of like emotional craftsmen, people have a tendency to calm down and become more constructive in how they operate. It's kind of contagious to be emotionally a craftsman. That is a good start in how to pause. That's it. Thank you.